Peter Bound, 2002, Mafia, The City of Lost Heaven comes out. 2010, Mafia 2 comes out, set in Empire Bay. Put us out of our misery. It's 2015. Mafia 3's been announced. Where's it set?
New Orleans.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a real place.
It is. Well, it's 2K and Hangar 13, the developer, are referring to it as a reimagined version of New Orleans for now. And the game stars Lincoln Clay, a black man who was raised as an orphan and has spent his entire life trying to find a family. He did this in the church. He did this by going to the army in the Vietnam War, and that's really relevant to the time period, which is 1968. And that was a pretty big, era for America, right? The murder of Martin Luther King, murder of Robert F. Kennedy, and being set in New Orleans, you have a lot of the mix of this sort of racial tension and political tension that's going on with that.
That's an interesting character because it's Mafia's in the title. We've been used to playing your sort of normal Italian-American mafioso dudes. This gentleman sounds like he's not maybe in the same sculpt as those guys.
Maybe not the same sculpt, but he goes down to New Orleans after the war. He gets in with the black mob, who has ties to the Italian mob. The Italian mob betrays them. And so then he is left to sort of pick up the pieces and then take down the Italian mob to basically revenge his family, more or less. And part of his crew, which includes Cassandra, Burke, and then Vito from the second
From
Mafia.
Mafia 2.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because Mafia 1 and 2, again, that it wasn't like a progression from the first one, but there was a little bit of crossover, so they're kind of doing it again, having that character in there. So with these other three characters, Burke the Irishman, how can they help your protagonist in this game? Are they just like tagging along with you? Do you send them on missions?
Right, so you never actually get a chance to play as them. Okay. But what you can do is, based on the mission I saw, you go to a front for the Italian mob, like something, a storefront they're using, and it's sort of like in the basement is where all their secret mob activity goes on. And essentially, as Lincoln, you go in there, and you can go many different ways. You can go underground, you can go the back entrance, the front entrance. Anyway, you get down there, you sort of go through this gunfight, right? It's lots of cover shooting. That's pretty much the core of the action. But then once you take over the place, you can assign any of your lieutenants to then run that area.
Okay.
So essentially what you're doing is taking over parts of New Orleans from the mob and then giving them to your crew as you're sort of building up your presence in the city.
Interesting, kind of a bit like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood or something. I wonder at later stages in the game then, will you have difficulty stretching your resources around that world? What about that open world? One of the things about Mafia 2 that was criticized, I remember in Kevin's review back in 2010, was that it wasn't a game that really adopted the open world aspect. It was really just a kind of a little bit of a playpen, and then the missions kind of happened in there. Did you get any idea of how Mafia 3 felt in that respect?
We really only saw two areas. We saw the bayou, the swamp, and then we saw the sort of the French Quarter district, right? And speaking to the executive producer on the game, Andrew Wilson, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of different areas to explore, but I didn't really get a great sense of how they're connected and how that's going to play out. But New Orleans itself looks very interesting. It has a lot of things that you would expect from the time, lots of jazz clubs and things like that. And there's a lot of things that are, touch on sensitive subject like race issues. Cops, white cops accosting black men on the street. You see lots of like peace signs, like wage peace instead of like wage war. So there's a lot of like anti-war sentiment going on.
And do you think they're actually like diving into that? Because it's a sort of a topic that you either stay away from or sort of do due diligence.
Yeah, you can't just bring it up and use it as a set dressing. And this was a question I asked them. They assured me that the writer on the game has a background of handling very sensitive issues. And and I told him, are you ready to be scrutinized for whether you handle this incorrectly or not? Yeah. And he said, we are doing our best to make sure we're doing this right. And time will obviously tell, but I can't imagine, given everything that's happened over the past few years in games, they're going to do this without double checking everything and making sure that they're actually handling the topic with respect.
For sure. One of the most fantastic parts of this series is that they always did a really good job of painting these towns, these eras, everything from the radio stations to like the cars you would drive. And I love how in previous Mafia games, car driving was so much different to modern games like Grand Theft Auto because the cars were kind of crappy. So is driving cars and car chases going to be a big part of Mafia 3 as well?
Yeah, car chases are back. But the thing that's different that they highlighted during the presentation is that everything is based on physics now, right? And one of the things you can do is target individual tires on cars. And it leads to a lot of explosions. Pretty much every single car that I saw that you rammed or blew a tire out of, it would flip over and explode. That was a little over the top, if I'm honest. But yeah, driving is a big part of it, and their new engine seems to be bringing something new to that aspect of the game.
Finally, the cover shooting aspect of this. Mafia 1 was a game that was kind of a bunch of different genres together, driving game, shooter game, kind of adventure game. Mafia 2, they definitely refined it. I guess the cover shooter game in 2010 was a bit more of a staple you could sort of play. How did this feel? Did it feel like Mafia 2? Did it feel like you were mowing down lots of people?
I didn't get a chance to actually play, but the action and the gunplay, it was pretty much, you're always just leaning out of a quarter to shoot somebody. And I have to wonder if that's actually what it's going to be like all the time, or if that is sort of the way that's best to play the game. Because to me, it seemed to be sort of a one-note pony when it came to the action. Right. Everything they were doing was based on cover. We'll have to see. We only saw a couple minutes of the game.
And when you go to these events, especially first time, they're often showing you something that is perhaps the most bombastic aspect of the game.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so maybe it's a game that has its downtime moments, which the older games in the series did. What were your sort of final impressions of it? What did you feel about this game coming away? Are you excited about the sort of the narrative and the time and era and the character they're using, or does it feel like another third-person action game?
I'd say the themes and the setting and the era are all very intriguing. I think, based on the music and everything you see around the city and the topics that are being addressed, I'm very interested in how they're going to handle that story and what they're actually going to say about Lincoln, because, he's searching for a family, but when I asked, is he actually going to find that family? They're like, well, we don't really want to talk about how the game ends. And that makes a lot of sense, but it really makes me want to know, is this a character who will be able to redeem himself and find the thing he's always been searching for, or will this be the thing that he searches for the rest of his life?
All right, well, I guess we're going to have to wait until 2016 to see more about that bad boy. But for more on all the games here at Gamescom in Cologne, beautiful Cologne, stay tuned to GameSpot.com.